Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so if you're learning a foreign language, you probably know this feeling. You're past the basics, you can kind of get by, but then bam, progress just stops. You've hit that dreaded intermediate plateau. You could order your coffee, sure, maybe argue about the price of bread, but when it comes to really expressing yourself on complex topics, you feel stuck. You're just using the same, 2,000 words you learned last year.
Yeah, that conversational slowdown.
Yeah.
It's pretty much universal. And, most people think, oh, I just need to talk more.
Right. Practice speaking.
But our sources today, well, they suggest something a bit counterintuitive. The key to unlocking that next level of fluency, the one that makes you sound, well, truly educated.
What is it then?
It might not be more listening practice, it's actually reading. But strategic reading, intensive and extensive.
Okay, reading. Interesting. Let's unpack this then. Our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to give you, the language student, a really comprehensive guide, how to use reading as your main engine for getting fluent. We're breaking down the exact strategies, what kind of material to use for your level, the tools, the mindset, everything you need to actually read effectively in your target language. Even if looking at a novel right now just fills you with dread.
Yeah, because we want to show you how this approach can rapidly expand your vocabulary and really fundamentally change how you grasp complex grammar.
Right.
And this focus is so important because reading, it forces you to engage with that other side of the language.
The other side?
Yeah, the polished side, the refined version, the significantly richer version that you often just don't hear in daily casual chat.
Yeah.
We're talking about giving you the ability to move beyond just, functional survival talk to actually expressing complex intellectual ideas.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dive into the first big reason why reading is so powerful. So the first, and maybe the most obvious benefit that our source material really emphasizes, is just the sheer scale of vocabulary growth.
Yeah.
When we talk about reading, we're talking about building a massive passive vocabulary.
Yeah.
Way beyond the kind of exposure you could realistically get just from talking to people day to day.
It's almost a mathematical thing, really. If you look at language usage data, conversational speech, well, it's inherently limited in its scope.
How so?
Even native speakers, fluent native speakers, they generally rely on a core of maybe, 3,000 to 5,000 words for 90% of their daily interactions.
Wow, really? That low?
Yeah. They recycle simple sentence structures, they use idioms, they lean heavily on context, shared understanding. You know how it is.
So, okay, if you only rely on listening and speaking, you'll get really good at those common casual words, which you need, obviously, for survival.
Exactly. Essential.
But that's where the plateau hits, isn't it?
Precisely. To sound articulate, to sound educated, to understand let's say, a sophisticated magazine article or a complex movie script, you need depth, not just breadth.
Yeah.
And written material, whether it's an opinion piece, a history book, a novel, it just demands and presents a vastly wider range of words.
Right.
It forces you to encounter specific language, less common synonyms, stuff that just won't come up when you're talking about what you had for dinner.
Yeah, makes sense.
Reading is really the only scalable way to bridge that gap between your, say, 5,000 conversational words and the 20,000 plus you might need for really high-level comprehension.
Okay, huge vocabulary boost. That leads straight into the second big benefit, right? How reading changes your relationship with grammar.
Yes, absorbing grammar in context. This is huge.
Instead of staring at charts.
Exactly. For most students, grammar is this painful thing. Studying abstract conjugation charts, memorizing rules, diagramming sentences.
Yeah, I remember those days. Not fun.
Reading kind of bypasses all that academic drudgery. You stop learning that a complex relative clause exists, and you start seeing how native writers actually use it flawlessly to make things crystal clear.
So it's more intuitive. You're not just talking about verb tenses here, are you? Can you give an example? What kind of complex grammar shows up in text but just vanishes in casual chat?
Oh, absolutely. Think about the passive voice.
Okay.
In casual conversation, people often avoid it. It can sound a bit formal or stilted.
Right.
But in academic writing or journalism, it's everywhere for emphasis or objectivity. Or think about conditional and subjunctive tenses in languages like French or Spanish. In quick speech, native speakers often simplify them or even get them wrong. They cut corners.
Happens all the time.
But in written text, Especially published, edited stuff, you're repeatedly exposed to the correct, sophisticated way to use these forms.
Mm.
It just embeds the structure naturally into your brain. No conscious memorization needed. It shows you how the language is structured for like maximum impact, not just minimum communication.
It's like reading acts as this constant quality control for your brain's grammar engine.
That's a great way to put it.
It replaces those awful grammar workbooks we all hated. And this difference, this grammar absorption difference between speech and text, it leads to one of the most provocative claims in the sources.
Yes. The idea that written language is essentially, well, a completely different language than spoken language.
That sounds pretty extreme, doesn't it? A completely different language.
Yeah.
Are they really saying we should just, like, stop listening to people talk? Or is it more about register? Formality?
It's entirely about register, yeah. But the difference is so stark, so dramatic, that the phrase almost feels justified.
Explain.
Well, think about spoken communication. It's fleeting, right? It relies on tone, body language, immediate feedback. So as a result, it's fast, super casual, full of contractions, filler words, the ums and likes, and often it's grammatically loose. Or just plain incorrect.
Right.
Because the main goal is just quick, functional understanding.
Like if I say, me and him went to the store, everyone gets it, even though it's technically wrong?
Yeah, exactly. Written language doesn't have that luxury. It has no crutch. It needs to be self-contained, perfectly clear.
Okay.
Therefore, it has to be richer, far more expressive, and significantly more grammatically polished, more correct. If you want to move beyond sounding like a basic survival speaker, the person who can hold a conversation but lacks any real elegance, you absolutely have to master this written, polished layer of the language.
And that's where we get that aha moment
Okay.
about expressive language. The second you start reading serious stuff, you bump into words that are just descriptive, precise, complex, words you almost never hear in casual speech, but they elevate the text.
Exactly. We're talking about words that might have a simple equivalent, but they carry so much more nuance. Think about going from the work was hard to the work was tedious.
Subtle difference, big impact.
Or the performance was great versus the performance was impeccable.
Impeccable. Yeah, you don't hear that every day.
Even simple adjectives like gorgeous or meticulous, they exist, obviously, but people tend to default to simpler words in quick conversation.
I have to admit, when I read this bit in the source material, I was genuinely surprised. I was kind of assumed that conversational fluency was true fluency.
It's a common assumption.
And being able to chat is crucial, don't get me wrong. But the absence of this richer vocabulary, that's what really defines that intermediate stage, isn't it?
It really is. And that ability to adapt your register, knowing the quick, casual word and the refined, polished word, that's the real superpower here.
The superpower.
It lets you operate effectively across all sorts of social and professional settings.
And this focus on the written word. Our source material had a great anecdote, really proved the power of this. It mentioned meeting someone, maybe not a native speaker.
Yes, I remember this one.
But this person used these beautiful, expressive, really memorable words in their speech. Words that even the experienced native listener wasn't necessarily expecting.
And that interaction, using that specific, complex vocabulary that clearly came from reading deeply, whether it was literature or journalism, it instantly made that speaker seem far more articulate, more sophisticated, maybe even more than their overall fluency level strictly warranted. They conveyed this sense of intellectual depth just by using a few of these polished terms.
So the takeaway is, if you can sprinkle even a few of those expressive, refined words into your speech,
You immediately stand out.
you sound more sophisticated, you show respect for the language, and you would project a much deeper level of fluency. You're tapping into that elegant side of the language.
And reading is the main way, maybe the only consistent way to get there.
So step one is understanding this distinction. You're not just learning to read, you're learning a whole higher register of your target language.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've established it. Reading, it's non-negotiable if you're really chasing fluency.
Yeah.
But like you said, just grabbing some 1,000-page classic, probably not the best idea initially.
No, definitely not. You'll crash and burn fast.
So we need a strategy for picking what to read. And that starts with this core principle, the rule of comprehensible input.
Yes. This is foundational for successful language acquisition. You often hear it called the I+1 principle.
I+1.
Yeah, I is your current level, and +1 means just a little bit beyond that. You have to choose texts that are right for where you are now, not where you wish you were. And definitely not something way too easy.
Right.
It's all about making steady, step-by-step progress without just, overwhelming your brain.
Which brings us neatly to this idea of the Goldilocks zone.
Mm-hmm. The just right zone.
We're looking for material that's, well, just right.
Exactly. The text should be challenging, yes, but manageable. A little bit above your current level, introducing some new words, some new structures, but not so much that it just stops you in your tracks.
And the logic here, according to the sources, is mostly about preventing burnout. Right.
Absolutely. If you pick up a text and you understand, like 10% of it, it's too hard.
Yeah.
You end up glued to the dictionary, you get frustrated, you quit the book, and maybe you even damage your motivation for reading for months.
And the opposite is true too, isn't it? If you understand basically everything, say 98%.
Then it's too easy. You're just coasting. You're recycling vocabulary you already know. You're not getting that cognitive push, that challenge you need to actually grow.
So where's the sweet spot?
Mm.
What percentage should we aim for?
The sources suggest aiming for roughly 70 to 80% comprehension.
70 to 80, okay.
You should be able to figure out a good chunk of the new words just from the context. It needs to stretch you, definitely. It should require some effort. But it shouldn't feel so overwhelming that you completely lose the story.
Got it. So let's talk practical formats, especially for people starting out in that intermediate stage. The sources had some great recommendations. What are the go-to formats to keep you in that Goldilocks zone?
Well, I'd highly recommend starting with short stories. They're excellent, especially for lower intermediate levels. That's often the B1 level on the CEFR scale, for anyone familiar with that.
B1. That's where you can handle routine stuff, travel, basic conversations, but you struggle with abstract ideas or complex writing.
Exactly. So those learners, B1, maybe early B2, they need quick wins, fast wins.
Yes, quick wins.
Absolutely. Short stories give you that satisfaction. Because they're brief, you get that immediate reward of finishing something, which is huge for keeping your motivation up. Psychologically important.
Where do you find them?
You can find great collections compiled specifically for language learners, or even just good quality serialized fiction online. Lots of options.
Okay, short stories. What else? Graded readers came up a lot.
Graded readers are fantastic because they are literally designed, often rewritten, and published with a specific language level in mind, usually aligned with those CEFR standards, A2, B1, B2, etc.
So they manage the difficulty for you.
Precisely. They actively control the vocabulary density, the grammar complexity. If you buy a B1 graded reader, you're almost guaranteed to be right in that Goldilocks zone. Takes the guesswork out of choosing.
Nice. And then maybe once you're hitting B1 or B2, that intermediate to upper intermediate zone, where you know your verb tenses but still struggle with flow, the sources really liked bilingual editions.
Yes. Bilingual editions are excellent for getting deeper insights into structure. Typically, they have a paragraph in your target language, and then right next to it or below it, the professional translation in your native language.
Oh, that sounds useful.
It's incredibly fun for analysis, actually, because translation is almost never word for word, right?
Right.
So you can visually compare. How do native speakers rearrange ideas? What structures do they use? What idioms pop up? You see the mechanics of translation happening. It helps you move away from just trying to translate literally in your head.
Okay, those are the do's. Now let's talk about the don'ts. The common advice we should maybe ignore. The first one is a bit surprising because you hear it a lot. Avoid children's books.
Yes. So many well-meaning tutors suggest them. Oh, the language is simple. But the reality is, children's vocabulary often focuses intensely on stuff that's just completely irrelevant to an adult learner.
Like what?
Primary colors, playground arguments, farm animals, simple repetitive action verbs.
And the big killer, the motivation killer, is just sheer boredom, isn't it?
Absolutely. If you're an adult who loves reading thrillers or maybe political nonfiction, reading about Sparky the cartoon dog's big day out is going to feel like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
When you read in your own language, you pick books based on your interests, right?
Yeah.
You have to apply the exact same logic here. Read thrillers, read sci-fi, read romance, whatever you like, but read it in your target language. Interest, not just simplicity, is what keeps you reading long enough to see the benefits.
Okay, noted. Ditch the picture books unless you genuinely like them.
Oh.
What's the second big pitfall?
Starting too big, too complex, too long. Avoid those massive, intimidating books, especially at the beginning.
Like the classics.
Yeah, exactly. A classic work of literature is often linguistically dense. It might use archaic words or structures you just don't need yet.
I have to share the story from the source material here because it perfectly illustrates this exact point, this ambition versus difficulty mismatch.
Oh, the Count of Monte Cristo story.
Yes. When I first started learning French, I was, super ambitious. I loved the movie adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo. So I thought, right, I'm going to read the original novel.
Oof. That's a notoriously tough read, even for native speakers sometimes, let alone in translation. How did that pan out?
It was an absolute disaster. And I want to detail this so listeners can avoid my pain. I bought this beautiful, thick, physical copy, like 798 pages, tiny font. And I was firmly B1 level.
Oh, dear.
I had this romantic image, me curled up, elegantly reading Dumas in French. The reality, I was looking at probably 10 words per sentence.
Wow.
I couldn't remember the beginning of the sentence by the time I got to the end, let alone keep track of the incredibly complex plot.
The cognitive load must have just been crushing.
It was immense, exhausting, and honestly, kind of humiliating. I gave up after about 30 pages, and that expensive book just sat on my shelf for 2 years mocking me, a monument to my failure.
Yeah, that's rough.
That book is a marathon for a native French speaker. An intermediate learner just cannot sustain motivation against that level of difficulty and sheer length, not when you're still building foundations.
And that kind of failure can be a huge setback mentally. It's so important to be kind to yourself. Choose something manageable. A novella, maybe a collection of essays, a shorter novel. Success breeds motivation. Failure just breeds frustration.
Definitely. And if you are struggling to find new stuff that grabs you, the sources have this brilliant cheat code strategy, the rereading strategy.
Ah, yes, rereading a favorite.
Reread a book you already know really, really well in your native language, like, say, The Hunger Games or a Harry Potter book.
This is super effective.
Yeah.
Because you already know the entire plot, right? You know the characters, the emotional beats, what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Knowing all that context frees up a huge amount of your mental energy. Your brain doesn't have to work so hard tracking the narrative. It can focus almost entirely on the language itself, the sentence structures, the new vocabulary.
So you can guess meanings from context much more easily.
Exactly. It maximizes your ability to understand new words from context, makes it much harder to get lost, and really accelerates your learning without feeling quite so overwhelming. It's a great trick.
Okay, so we've picked the right material, something in that Goldilocks zone. Now we need the right method, because just staring at the page isn't enough, is it?
Right.
Reading in a foreign language isn't just one activity. There are two main ways to do it: intensive reading and extensive reading.
That's right. And knowing when to use each one is absolutely key. Key to staying sane and key to actually making progress.
Let's start with intensive reading. What's that all about?
Intensive reading is the deep dive. It's slow, it's analytical, it's when you approach the text less for pleasure and more like a scholar doing surgery on the language.
Okay, sounds serious.
It is. It means reading very slowly with the specific learning goal in mind. You look up every single word you don't know, every single one. You underline vocabulary. You focus heavily on analyzing the grammar. How are the sentences put together?
You might even translate it line by line.
You could, yeah, if you really want 100% comprehension of the syntax.
But this sounds incredibly time-consuming.
It is, and that's why it has a very specific, very limited use case. This method is really only ideal for a short, focused piece of text, a single paragraph maybe, maximum one chapter, something that contains really difficult or critical information that you absolutely have to understand completely.
Like what? Give me an example.
Maybe you're studying a complex business contract in the language, or an academic paper abstract in your field, or a really nuanced political commentary piece. It's for surgical precision, maximum understanding and retention, but only on a very small sample of text.
Okay, so here comes the big warning, right? This goes back to my Monte Cristo disaster.
Exactly. Do not try to apply this intensive method to an entire book. Please don't.
Why not?
If you try to intensively read 300 pages, stopping every 15 seconds to look up a word, you will slow yourself down so much that you completely lose the narrative flow. You forget why you were even reading it. And ultimately, you'll just quit. You'll give up entirely. Intensive reading is a study tool. It is not a leisure activity.
Got it. No. Intensive, small doses, specific purpose. So that brings us to method 2, the one we should be doing most of the time.
Yes. Extensive reading. This should be your default mode. Like 95% of your reading time should be extensive.
Okay. Extensive reading, what does that look like?
It's basically the opposite of intensive. It's all about volume and flow. It means reading without stopping constantly, letting the text just kind of wash over you. And here's the key part. Deliberately accepting that you will not understand every single word on the page.
That feels weird, though. Don't we want to understand everything?
Yeah. In the long run, yes. but not word by word, minute by minute. Extensive reading is about immersion and absorption over time. It's critical for vocabulary building because it lets your brain see words multiple times in different contexts.
Okay. Repetition and context.
Exactly. If you stop to look up every single word, your focus shifts away from the story and on to the dictionary. With extensive reading, the goal is general comprehension, understanding the main ideas, the flow of the plot, not deciphering every single adjective.
Okay, 95% extensive.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we still need to learn new words, right? We can't just ignore everything we don't know.
true. So we need to blend the two methods intelligently. We need a clear rule for when it's okay to stop and look up a word.
Because ignoring all new words is pointless. But looking up too many leads to that burnout we talked about.
Precisely. The strategy is to prioritize extensive reading, keep that flow going, but allow yourself very specific, targeted interruptions only if a word meets one of two criteria.
Okay, criterion number 1.
Frequency. You look up words that you see over and over and over again.
Makes sense.
If a particular noun or verb or phrase keeps appearing maybe 3 or 4 times within just a page or two, it's clearly important, structurally important, or plot-wise important.
Right. If you don't know it, you're missing something fundamental.
Exactly. You can't fully follow the story. So in that case, the interruption is justified. Look it up once. Make a quick mental note or a physical note, and then crucially move on. Get back into the flow.
Okay, frequency. What's the second reason to look something up?
Interest. Simple as that. Look up words that just seem interesting to you.
Interesting how?
Maybe they sound cool, maybe they seem really expressive or elegant or unique. This taps into your personal curiosity, which is actually a really powerful driver for memory.
Okay.
If you see a word like, say, meticulous, and you immediately think, oh, that's the perfect word to describe my colleague's work, that personal connection makes it worth the brief pause. It's more likely to stick.
So the core principle underlying both of these is always try to guess from context first.
Always. Give it your best shot. If you can make a reasonable inference, just keep reading. Keep that momentum.
But if the word keeps bugging you because it's frequent or it just really sparks your interest,
Then you reach for the tool. And that brings us nicely to the tools that can make this whole process way, way easier.
right.
We've covered the why read, the what to read, and the how to read, intensive versus extensive. Now for the practical side. The reality is, and our sources really hammered this home, success in extensive reading today often hinges on using technology smartly. The biggest tip, the one that genuinely makes reading maybe 10 times easier for a language learner, go digital.
Read on an e-reader like a Kindle or an iPad or even just your smartphone.
Exactly. Using apps like the Kindle app or Apple Books or similar, it completely changes the game. And it's not just about carrying fewer books around, it's about reducing friction, specifically the friction of looking up words.
The instant lookup feature.
That's the killer feature. You're reading extensively, you're in the flow, you hit one of those words that meets our criteria, it's frequent or it looks interesting, you just click it or tag it, and boom,
Yeah.
instant definition. Or translation,
Yeah.
often with usage examples right there. And crucially, you do it without leaving the app, without breaking your concentration too much.
Compare that to reading a physical book.
Right.
You stop, you put the book down, you find your dictionary or grab your phone, you type the word into Google Translate, you find the meaning. By the time you look back at the book page,
You've completely lost the thread, you've forgotten the sentence structure, maybe even what was happening in the plot.
right. Digital tools minimize that distraction. They help you stay immersed in the story, which is vital for extensive reading to actually work.
And there's another advantage too. Digital tools make it super easy to highlight words or phrases you find interesting.
Oh yeah, the highlighting.
You can digitally underline that cool sentence structure or that elegant word you want to remember. You mark it for later review. That simple action is actually a key step in moving vocabulary from just passive recognition, seeing it on the page, towards active use.
Okay, so general e-reader apps are great, but the sources also recommended some specialized language learning tools. Apps like LingQ came up.
Yeah, apps like LingQ, ReadLing, and others can be incredibly useful, especially for shorter texts maybe. They offer this kind of integrated learning management environment.
How does that work?
Well, often you can import your own text, maybe a news article you found online or a blog post you're interested in, and they have excellent, easy, built-in word lookup. Usually it's just a click.
Okay, similar to Kindle so far, what's the extra benefit?
The added benefit is how they help manage that crucial transition. From passive knowledge, just recognizing a word, to active knowledge, being able to use it.
How?
When you look up a word in LingQ, for example, it often automatically saves that word. It knows you didn't know it. It adds it to a personal list for you.
Ah, okay. So it tracks your unknown words.
Exactly. And this is key conceptually. Remember, passive vocabulary is recognizing impeccable when you see it written down. Active vocabulary is being able to pull impeccable out of your brain and use it correctly in a conversation.
Right, big difference.
LingQ and similar apps help bridge that gap because they let you turn those saved words into study tools, flashcards, quizzes, matching games, whatever.
So it forces recall practice?
Exactly, forced recall. You have to actively retrieve the meaning, not just passively recognize it in context.
Yeah.
That's what really pushes a word into your long-term usable memory bank.
Okay, so we've covered the intake side, processing the written words, using tools. What about the output side? Our last tip kind of bridges the gap between reading and speaking, doesn't it?
It does. Between that huge pile of passive knowledge you're building up and the active knowledge you need for real-time conversation. And that tip is read out loud.
Read out loud, like the whole book.
Oh, heavens no. That would be exhausting and probably not very useful. This is another surgical technique,
Yeah.
like intensive reading. Okay, so small doses again.
Yes. Choose a short, manageable paragraph. Maybe just 3 to 5 sentences from a chapter you just finished reading silently, and then read just that small bit out loud, maybe a few times over.
What's the point? What does reading aloud actually do for you?
Well, it serves 2 really important functions. First, and this is especially crucial for languages where spelling and pronunciation are, let's say, creatively related, like English or French.
Definitely English.
Reading aloud forces you to actually articulate the sounds. You have to physically move your mouth and tongue to make the correct noises. If you only ever read silently, you might internalize a mental pronunciation that's just completely wrong.
Guilty as charged. I've done that.
We all have. And the second benefit, arguably the most important one, reading aloud actively bridges that gap between passive and active vocabulary.
How so?
The sources were really clear on this. The ultimate goal of all this reading isn't just to recognize the word impeccable when you see it on the page.
Right.
It's having that word available, ready for immediate recall when you're actually talking to someone.
Okay.
If you never ever practice saying impeccable out loud, then when the perfect moment comes up in a conversation to use it, your brain might hesitate. It might freeze.
The connection isn't strong enough.
Exactly. The pathway between the written word, its meaning, and the actual motor function of your mouth saying it, it's not fully formed. It's not automatic. Reading out loud helps solidify that neural pathway. It turns the word from just a passive idea you recognize into an active tool you're ready and able to deploy. It's really the essential final step in converting all that reading volume into actual conversational elegance.
Makes perfect sense. Practice saying it to be able to say it.
Pretty much. Hashtag tag outro. So let's just quickly recap this deep dive then. The main takeaway. Reading isn't just some optional extra for language learning. It's really a core pillar for mastery. It gives you access to that richer, more expressive language, that massive vocabulary growth, things that just listening and speaking alone often can't provide at the same scale.
And we learned that picking what to read means sticking to that Goldilocks zone. Just challenging enough, but not overwhelming. And crucially, prioritize stuff you actually find interesting as an adult. Forget the boring kids' books, unless you like them. And please, avoid my 798-page mistake with overly ambitious classics too soon.
Yeah, definitely avoid that. And your daily strategy should be overwhelmingly extensive reading, maybe 95% of the time. Keep the flow going, get meaning from context, save that super slow intensive reading only for short, targeted paragraphs where you need deep understanding, and definitely leverage those digital tools. Instant lookup, easy highlighting, maybe apps like LingQ for vocabulary management.
And don't forget that vital final step, reading short passages out loud. Make sure all those great new words you're learning passively actually become active and usable in your speech. Remember, the written word is kind of your shortcut to sounding more sophisticated.
It really is. And that raises an important final thought, maybe a challenge for you, the listener. We talked about how using those expressive, elegant words can instantly make you sound more fluent, more masterful. Yeah.
So here's the challenge. What's one new word? Maybe something polished, elegant, or just interesting that you're going to intentionally look for in your reading this week. Find it, research it using your tools, and then try to actually use it. in a real spoken sentence sometime this week.
Ooh, I like that challenge.
Yeah.
Go find one elegant word and deploy it. Go explore that other, more sophisticated side of the language you're learning. It's waiting for you on the page. And it really could be the key to finally escaping that intermediate plateau.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.